I was a little girl when my father planted an idea in my head. We were driving home from Mass one Sunday when he said, "You know, by the time you're an adult, you could be up there at the altar celebrating Mass. By then, the church will ordain women." He was wrong. The church, ever averse to change, only doubled down on the male priesthood. The reasoning is that because Jesus had only chosen male apostles, the church had no authority to ordain women priests. Still, my father's hopeful sentiment has always stayed with me. And years later, when I became the religion reporter for the newspaper in Austin, Texas, I encountered dozens of women religious leaders. They were church pastors, bishops, rabbis, Zen priests. Some of them had only seen the doors to ministry open relatively recently, but here they were, living testaments to progress. And even though many, many other religious institutions did not allow women leaders, the future, from what I could tell, was definitely female. Then around 2008, I started covering an emerging trend in Austin, what we jokingly called the hipster Christians, because they were impossibly cool. They wore vintage clothes and had tattoos and piercings, and a few of them had man buns. And they worshiped in kind of weird places like bars and bowling alleys, but they seemed really genuinely concerned about pressing issues in Austin like homelessness and addiction and gentrification and race relations. And their whole aesthetic and their message seemed to be breaking with traditional churches. And they seemed culturally relevant and authentic. And yet, as I began to report on these hipster Christians, I noticed something. Their leadership was exclusively male. I asked one of the pastors about this, and he kind of smiled sheepishly and said, no, they don't allow women pastors in their churches. He quoted 1 Timothy, a Bible passage that says women cannot hold authority over men. But they can teach children and other women, he added brightly. Despite all their appearances, these hipsters were just kind of like the old fuddy-duddies in the more conservative churches. They were looking for the same biblical passages to justify barring women from leadership. And though I normally kept a professional distance in my reporting, I couldn't help but take it personally this time. And I started to feel a deep and growing outrage. How could we be here in the 21st century in one of the most innovative and progressive cities in the world and be having a conversation about whether women can teach men? These religious spaces were being reimagined in every single way except for who held power. And in that selective preservation of male leadership, I realized something that transcended my role as a journalistic observer. Women should not stand for this, not in traditional spaces, not in seemingly progressive ones, not anywhere. Thank you.